We meet again. Hello, I'm Andrew, and this is my discipline to be here with you. It's called a healing journey, definitive journey, riffing. These are all the ways that I describe this process that I'm partaking with you. This is also my connection, my deliberate connection to infinite being. This may sound ridiculous, just looking at my talking head here on the internet, but for me, out here in the real world, it's utilizing what I perceive as an evolutionary tool in its right way. I want to use this internet to better my own being. And so what I was saying the other day about healing, a deeper dive, was I was talking about how energy being, when you begin tapping it, you notice dissonances, and that's where healing begins. And for me, healing is very physical, very physical. Yes, it's got to do with emotional patterns and traumatic conditioning, and then all the thoughts and ideas to go over that old ground. Those are the inner chains. What happens though is after living that for many years, as I did, you accumulate all the damage of all of that physical stress and physical tension that is a byproduct of those choices, those inner choices, which are conditioned by traumas and harshness and not even intentional traumas, but just the fact that, as the being, to speak only of myself, the being that I am, the way my early environment unfolded was just very, very unhealthy for me. And so it just led to a life where all I created was ill health in myself and around me. That's over. Here I am. And part of my problem is that is this subtle mental process, And that's not to say that the mental process is bad in itself. It is our most beautiful evolutionary tool, is our minds, which is to say, our mental process, our memory, our imagination, our identity, these parts of our mentalization, they are the essential tools of our evolutionary process, which we have developed over the countless millennia of existence on our planet. And again, that's just the story of material life. A story that yields to us when we reach silence within. And reaching silence within seems to involve mostly getting to grips with the conditioned response that's inside of us, one way or another, for better or for worse, So for me, healing, it's got a very physical element, and by coming here to you, I'm forced to be in my face. I'm forced to be present with you. Even if you're not there, there's a camera on me. I'm being watched. I'm allowing myself to be watched. I'm insisting that I become watched so that I myself am forced to be present in that discipline. Because otherwise, I collapse back into abstraction. And abstraction actually is, the truth of solitude. But if you're just subtly thinking all the time, it just gnaws away at the fabric, like termites eating the wood of the house. You know what I mean? Like that's my problem. That's one of my things. It's just a subtle background activity. And so by coming here to you and to make this happen, is a way that it's a way that I'm forcing myself to come forward, and actually it calms me. despite the fact that I'm nervous and I don't know what I'm doing and I feel like a fool and all these things, all these aspects of the old conditioning and my conditioned response, what it does is it brings me into the moment. It's one of the things that I do to connect with being, infinite being. So that's what I'm doing when I'm coming here. And it leads into what I want to talk about today, which is letting life happen. This actually has been the hardest thing for me to do in life, is let life happen. Because when you think something's wrong with you inside, you can't let life happen. You never get to life. You never get to life at all. You just are locked in an inner process of some kind of conflict with whatever is going on inside you. You know, for me, as I've said, it was like this shameful, guilt-ridden, humiliated sense of being wrong all the time. And that dislocation from self was an alienation from environment. And when that happens in your home life, then what can you do with the world out there, which is a world of even deeper strangeness, apparently, than home? For me, that was the challenge. I was discussing the way Alan Watts talked about the tension that he realized in his school experience. And I thought to myself, so true. And thankfully, there's someone talking about that tension. It's physical. It gets written in your body. And that's what seals you inside. But for me, it happened at home. I didn't even get to school, you know? And so for decades of my life out there in the work world, I never even really, I didn't have a career. I didn't do anything meaningful because I couldn't get to life, because I was trapped in this inner imprisonment, this inner abstraction. You know, a friend of mine the other day asked me about my career previous to healthcare, you know, previous to working with people in mental health and addictions. And this is to say my life before 2018. And there was no career. There was no life before 2018. There was only my unhealthy coping mechanisms, which is to say the trauma-induced breakage from self and alienation from self with all those characteristics that I just described. And then life was nothing more than the wasteland that materialized in alignment with that inner disposition, which is one of the hardest things to do, is to take ownership of that and go, oh wow, I've wasted a lot of time, and I've wasted a lot of chances, and I've wasted a lot of energy, I've wasted a lot of years, you know. Because when you wake up, you just got to begin and stop whatever it was that you were doing. It's all that there is. It's all that there is just sweet being. And then you realize that everything that was just in the way. And it wasn't something on the outside, even though it came from the outside. It's that we were convinced. I was convinced that that was the way. You know, these people, these experiences, they convinced me that of all those negative aspects, and I couldn't break free of them myself. And then, thank God, thanks be to Creator, thanks be to Spirit, thanks be to God, whatever empty signifier you put on the unmanifest. And by unmanifest, I mean the simple nature that life is an ongoing process of creation, and we are in it. We are in it and of it. And so whatever you're thinking about is yesterday's news. Thinking is yesterday's news. Imagination is tomorrow's possibility. Vision is tomorrow's possibility. And I've been talking about visualization as a key piece of coming to grips with whatever you've got going on, you know, is loosening your capacity to visualize. It begins in nothingness. It begins in an absence of any kind of thinking, because thinking is yesterday's news. Thinking is memory. Thinking is all your yesterdays. That's all it is. And that doesn't mean thinking isn't beautiful. Thinking is the beginning of creation. But if we don't get a grip on it, then it rules us. And memory rules us. And, you know, as Sadhguru would say, karma rules us. And then we're not ourselves. We are these puppets. We are these automaton robots of history. And that is not living. That is not being. So there's the process of like coming to stillness inside. And then there's the process of beginning from the proper standpoint, which is no standpoint. It's absence. It's the recognition that what is this eternal fountain of spontaneous creation. Every moment is a spontaneous creation. This is why in my music, I strive for as much improvisation as possible, because that is a practice whereby, for some reason, for me, tone stirs an ecstasy in me. My mind calms and stops, and then, I don't know, my mind loves being a passenger of sweet tonal emotion. And so the beautiful poetry begins for me in music. Everyone has got to find their own thing which makes their heart sing, right? And so here I am, as usual, circling and circling and circling around what I'm trying to say, which is letting life happen. Letting life happen. It's the hardest thing to do. And yet it's the easiest thing to do. It's one of those paradoxes in life. When you realize that you're in the seat of infinity, that you're in the lap of infinity, that you're just a little tiny speck of light in an infinitude of light, then what's there to be afraid of? What's there to worry about? I mean, I'm not saying you don't need to pay attention. No. I'm talking about that empty, hollow process of being involved in yesterday's news. And that's all that thinking can ever be. And in that state, it's hard to let life happen, this I can tell you. And honestly, for me, the worst aspect of that dislocated wasteland feeling, which created a wasteland living, inside of which there was only coping mechanisms. My life was a scaffolding, a flimsy and unstable scaffolding of coping mechanisms, which were unhealthy and mistaken. Unhealthy in the extreme for me, because decades of my life just went away. And how did they go away? They went away because I was isolated and I didn't have any connections, and I just would stew and think and worry, and I couldn't let life happen. Of course, life is always happening. Let me just say that. Life is always happening. The question is, how are we moving with it? And what would happen is I'd just be like so worried, right? So worried that whatever happened, I was never ready for. I didn't see the things that were happening. I wasn't able to connect in an authentic and genuine way. I wasn't able to get with the flow. I was always a step behind. And worst of all, when things did happen, because good things happen and bad things happen. In particular, when the bad things happen, I'm thinking here, and then everything came this way. It struck me unawares, Everything that's happened, for good and for worse in my life, better and for worse in my life, has been something that my thinking and my worrying didn't anticipate. And so now I have come to that sense of just unhook that process. Let it be. Even if it's happening, I don't care. I don't get involved with it. And as a result, I've found that thinking and that magnificent process of how we remember, how we visualize, how we identify, how we think, all of the aspects of our beautiful evolutionary process, which is our humanness, which is what makes us like the most evolutionary animal on the planet, is just that. It's just those things. Why aren't they in our service? It's because something's gone wrong in our society. Something has gone wrong in the way we understand our process. And we can't let life happen. Now, if we let life happen, we're afraid of the consequences, right? And yet, it's the only way to properly visualize, to properly engage with life. letting life happen. This is something you can only do after you've set yourself up properly. After you've come to some sense of discipline inside, you come to realize that you're going to die, and that this moment is really the only thing you have. This living moment, this moment outside. The moment, for example, in my disciplined process right here, the moment that I'm living in this outside place here, and that I'm deliberately bringing into the internet medium. Honestly, I think this is a technology tool that everyone should be using in the same way. Not to just do what I'm doing, but do whatever it is that turns you on the most, and bring it into the internet, because that vibration, your highest vibration, is what we should be putting into this thing. Our highest vibration, our best self, our sense of being, our sense of aliveness, of being alive as a living part of this infinite whole that we dissolve into, that soaks into us. And then when things begin happening, it's when the magic happens. You can't predict what life's going to do. You just can't do it. It just begins happening. And if you do the work inside, and for me, I encapsulate that in loving, healing, evolving, dreaming. So loving and healing is an inner process of dealing with all the harms that we've experienced, and all the ways the traumas, big and small, have caused a reaction in us, and our reaction has become this dislocating element that then becomes a historic process, which has its own power. Pain body is how Eckhart Tolle describes it, and I think that's the best way to sum it up, is the pain body, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just something that's inside. It is inside. That's what you got to unhook yourself from. But over time, it is a pain. It's written in your body. It's in your body. Where is it? Just breathe and feel where it is. Where are you tense? Where are you just uncomfortable? It's there, And inevitably, you're going to find a story, a historical story, that until you soak it in your loving presence, it just continues on, And so soaking in loving presence is like, it's difficult, because trying to describe healing, it's like, well, loving, we all have a feeling, a sense of what loving is. Loving being, giving, being present, being relaxed, feeling good, feeling physically good. It's delightful. It's a blissful feeling. It's a pleasurable feeling. And in its extreme, when you engage the intensities of life, it is ecstasy. So loving, right? When things are in the way of that inside of us, which is to say pressure, unpleasantness, tension, discomfort, these are all words that I use to describe when I'm engaging a client, say, who's got the mental illness or the addictive issue, who can't relax. They can't relax. Why? There's a piece that's driving them. There's a discomfort that becomes compulsive, impulsive. It's a pressure, right? And that's a challenge to deal with, how to come to grips with pressure, right? Pressure comes from the mind. Pressure comes from the pain body. It's the pain that drives us. How we're dealing with our pain is how our life is going to unfold. And of course, that gets us to sort of a Buddhist kind of like, all life is suffering, right? And all life is pain. And that's true. But again, someone like Sadhguru says, it's only suffering if you're suffering it. It's only suffering if you're suffering it. So, because for me, as I began healing, and I'll use metaphors, as I began soaking the tense and pain places in this relaxing, cleansing, bathing flow of energy. As I began, I use my hands as if it's a tactile thing. It's like a massage. If you're massaging stiff, rigid muscles, you're cracking them. You're rubbing a loving relaxation into them. And they release, they release, they release, they release to the loving touch. These are the ways that I metaphorize what healing is. Loving, and then if there's something in the way, healing, Those are inner processes, right? Then when your wounds begin getting healed, you got what I call evolving dreaming. Evolving is like is like we're evolving in our story of world, our world story, our earth story, you know what I mean? As a being of infinite living essence. I find myself in this body. I find myself in this world. I find myself in this context, in this reality. And at that moment, engaging in that process is evolving. It's an evolutionary and evolving thing. And when I'm working in healthcare, this is how I can contribute to evolving process, helping people feel relaxed, helping people feel at ease, helping them for a moment feel just a little bit okay. And you'd be surprised, you'd be astounded at what that can create in someone. And then there's dreaming, which is to say, dreaming as something that arises out of that invisible, seemingly non-existent place inside, the unmanifest, where we realize that whatever infinitude of possibility that we can ponder from the known to the unknowable, that's a forever extending, evolutionary, evolving thing, that goes forever into a space that is infinity beyond which we can ever apprehend even. That's why I like to call it eternity. We are infinity unfolding forever into eternity. That allows for the place of the known and the unknown, which is infinity, and then the unknowable, which is eternity, into which infinity unfolds. And I feel that we need that. We need that in order to release from any fixation that's in the mind. Knowledge is imperfect. Our memory is imperfect. We can never apprehend the thing itself. Even this apparent material reality that's so firm and so, meat and potatoes, you know what I mean? The meat and potatoes of our bodies, right? Look into any cell in our body, like look into any surface within, and you just get ever more minuscule surfaces of complexity, complex activity. And at the atomic level, the subatomic level, whatever we're even looking at that point, it's made of 99.999% emptiness, inside of which there's like little sparklings of some kind of energy activity. And it just keeps on going. As far as we will look, all we're ever going to find is that. And it's mostly nothingness. Just like so that's the subatomic quantum magic world of mystery within. And it's the same thing outside. I talk about dark energy or dark matter. The actual material substance of even the universe that we can see around us on the outside is still almost nothing compared to everything that is not. And by is not means unmanifest to our senses. So, we're just a dazzling, sparkling moment of living sacred energy in an ever-cresting wave of an infinite wave that's cresting right now into the future forever. And the real trick in life is just letting life happen. That's what I know, and that's what I'm telling you, because that is the most important thing, is to just sit in the seat of infinity and realize that the world is carrying on. Now, when I say that doesn't absolve me or you or anyone of responsibility, but it's putting responsibility in its right place, first and foremost. I'm a being that's going to die. And I don't know when that's going to happen. That's not in my control. It isn't. It's not just a question of being healthy to forestall aging and disease process as best we can. It's randomness, earthquakes, tsunamis, car accidents, war. Like, I don't know, like just so many things can happen that are out of our control, and we don't know. We do not know. So this moment is our sacred responsibility. There's a sacred gravity is what I've been singing about in this moment. And that is death. But it's not negative. It's liberating. It's liberating because death is the only part of that dark eternity that we can conceive. And we don't really conceive it. We just have an awareness that it's there, which is to say our momentary thinking, remembering, visualizing, identifying consciousness will dissolve into infinity someday in a way that we don't know how it's going to happen, but it will happen. And therefore, this liberates us to be in this moment. And at that point, this is where taking responsibility, doing the very best you can, which is in the Carlos Castaneda language, being impeccable. Being impeccable means I am not more important in this moment. I am, in fact, a humble little piece in a moment of unfathomable magnitude and importance of itself. And being impeccable is doing your best to achieve the best result in the moment, whatever that might be, and whatever you might do. And that requires being disciplined. Being disciplined, which is to say, not giving in to certainties, not giving in to history, not allowing pain body to dominate you, not allowing your conditioning to abstract and dislocate you and distract you from being in this moment. I mean, surfing is the best metaphor. It's like that moment of sacred balance. You know, a wave rises, and you are there. And when you choose to get on the wave, thinking is not even there. All there is how balanced you are, how focused you are, how in the moment you are, how with the flow you are. That is surfing. And surfing is the stoke. When you know surfing, you know that stoke, being balanced, being one with the flow, being one. That's being stoked. And for me, music is my surfing, you know? This with you right here, right now, this is my surfing. I'm finding my sacred balance inside, and it involves me being here with you for some reason, you know, and I'm not questioning it. I just know this is what I need to do, and this is part of my evolving process. I'm sharing my dream with you. Remember what I was saying? Dream farming and dream hunting. This is the dream farming for me right here. I'm coming to you. I'm turning the earth. I'm being in this process. I'm cultivating right now. I'm cultivating the rich earth of my being. Metaphorizing, of course, because I am trying to point to something which can't be talked about because it's not manifest. And so just as acceptance and commitment therapy would say, that's one of my therapeutic mainstays, right? Metaphor, powerful descriptive tool, because analytical mind cannot capture or encapsulate what is. But when you use metaphor, you are acknowledging that your words are just a signpost, an intuitive signpost that points to something that we need to be aware of. So I'm talking about turning the rich earth within is to keep the richness and the abundance and the growing nutrient flowing inside of yourself. Let the water flow through this earth so that all growing things may thrive. And then sometimes, because I get to be a hunter in this life. I get to be a warrior. I get to be a shaman. I get to be this. I also do dream hunting, which is my music. And if you have a thing which turns you on and brings you to an intense, ecstatic peak, that's your dream hunting, which is to say, I'm coming from a place of cultivation and rich abundance right here and now. This is all I need. And yet, I delight. I feel delight. A call comes to me from inside my delight, from inside my ecstasy, calls me to go and run into spirit musically and be balanced and harmonious and at my best, at the edge of my capacity to be present. And I find in that moment, well, the magic happens and the beautiful poetry happens and it transforms me and it transforms the people around me. And for a moment, we enjoy a moment of bliss, a moment of bliss ecstasy. And dream hunting is the essence of letting life happen. Even though it's a calling from inside of me and I follow it and I go to it, I'm letting it happen. I'm letting the highest part of myself lead me into the undiscovered land that I track and within which spirit arises in magical and unpredictable ways. And then it happens. Just in the same way, this dream farming seems a lot more predictable, and yet it's still the same unpredictable richness. I come to you every time I make these videos, and I'm simply turning the rich, abundant earth of my being and letting the nourishing waters flow through me as a living, cultivating thing in this world. And that in itself allows this beautiful vibrancy to rise up, that I'm living and giving and being here on the internet. Why? Because this is what we should be using the internet for, which is to share our best self, convert this thing which has been sidetracked by the vile powers that be. I don't want to talk about that. I simply want to flow into it with you and let life happen. Because when life starts happening and you begin finding your own inner balance and harmony with it, that is magical living. That is magical living. And at that point, thinking can be welcomed back. Thinking is a passenger in this journey. You know, thinking is a passenger, and thinking is the beautiful poetry. Thinking is every creation that we've ever made. It's not just all the negative and the harshness and the conditioning and the broken, faulty processes of it. It's also the highest realization, which is, say, the art and the invention, the science, the progress, the creative inspiration of it. That is also mind. But when mind is in its proper place, which is to say, a passenger in this vehicle of aliveness, of living energy, of loving, living energy, being, which is to say, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, depending where you're at. So, letting life happen is the hardest thing in the world, and it's the easiest thing in the world at the same time. I encourage you to let life happen. And if there's something in the way of letting life happen, again, start at the first principle, loving. Just be feeling good inside yourself. If you ever get worried or self-conscious like I do, take a breath, relax, feel good. Feel physically good inside your body. And if you got a pain somewhere or discomfort or something that's pressuring you, rub that love in. Rub that love in. Allow it. Allow it to soak in. Whatever dream, whatever visualization gives you the sweetest kick. And then begin. All right. That's today. So, again, be well and let life happen. Until next time, keep reaching.